Chapter 2. The Aura is with us. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 2 of my What If Pokemon Raised Ash story. If you're new to this story, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. A few months have passed and Mew is beginning to wonder how two young boys can get into so much mischief. Just when they think they're going to stay in the main cave, they turn their back and the boys are gone. Ash has always been curious and adventurous, getting into places he shouldn't, but now that he has a co-conspirator, he's gotten even more daring. Heaving a sigh, Mew closes their eyes and searches for their sons' auras, only for them to snap open in panic as they lock onto both of them. What are Ash and Inazoo doing at the palace? Ash floats through the halls of the big stone thing that his mappa calls a palace. Inazoo rides atop his head, keeping a lookout for anyone that may stumble upon them, while Ash searches for what they came here for. He could never explain it, but for years now, Ash has felt something calling to him from this place. But he'd never tried to look for it, because his mappa had always told him that the palace is not somewhere to go uninvited. And if anyone were to see him, they'd think that he was up to no good. A few hours ago, he'd had that feeling again, and Inazoo convinced him that they needed to find out what it was. He'd even convinced Ash to take the fastest route by teleporting, even though he's still new to the ability and it makes him dizzy and nauseous. After the room had stopped spinning, they'd begun their search, following that quiet tugging at the back of Ash's mind, which has led them to this unusual cavern they currently find themselves in. It's a very strange place. There isn't a single blade of grass or bush. Instead, the floor is covered in some kind of soft red fabric, while the walls are covered in still images of humans and Pokemon, and even more fabric cut into various shapes. The entire space is filled with items placed on top of things made of wood and more red fabric, like what covers the floor. The items are encased in a strange ice that somehow isn't cold or melting. Ash can't help but wonder at how this strange ice was created and why the humans had placed these items inside it. He is drawn out of his wonder when he feels that familiar tug at the edge of his awareness. Turning towards it, he floats over to a wooden ice thing set in a small alcove, separated from all the others. Gazing through the ice, he can see an odd-looking stick. It's long and straight with a glossiness to it. At one end, there's a strange kind of metal contraption attached to it, and in the center of that contraption sits a large blue crystal. Ash stares intensely at the crystal, feeling like there's something there he's not seeing. As he stares, his eyes begin to glow blue, and he begins to see something deep within the crystal. There, in the crystal's center, is a small figure. Ash's eyes widen and the glow disappears from them. Is someone trapped inside the crystal? Is that what's been calling him? Plucking Inazoo off his head, Ash places him on the ground before telling him to back away. Once his brother is at what seems to be a safe distance, Ash holds his hands out to the ice encasing the stick. Focusing his power on it, he prepares to break through, only for the ice to shift under the slightest nudge from his mind. Blinking, Ash focuses and finds himself lifting what he now sees as a hollow ice box.
Well, that was anticlimactic.
Rolling his eyes at Inazoo, Ash turns back to the stick. Reaching out to it, he places his hand on the crystal. As he does so, he hears an unfamiliar voice echo in his head. Sir Aaron. Ash jumps, barely managing to stop himself from looking around in a foolish attempt to find the source of the voice. It's obvious that it's coming from whoever is inside the crystal. The name Aaron rings a bell, and it takes only a few seconds for Ash to remember where he's heard it. Ever since Ash found out about humans, his mappa has been telling him and Inazoo stories of all the different humans that they've met over their long centuries. Aaron was one of the few humans that had not only known Mew on a personal basis, but had also become accepted by the Tree of Beginning. Ash loves stories about him the most. Looking down at the crystal, Ash tries to reach out to whoever is inside it. He asks who they are and if they know Sir Aaron. The voice answers back that they are Lucario. Ash's eyes snap open in shock and his hand jerks away from the crystal as though it had physically sapped him. Just as he's about to place his hand back on the crystal, he hears a very familiar, very unhappy voice. Wild Child Ash and Tumble Inazoo! I thought I told the both of you that you are not to come here! With great reluctance, Ash turns to see his Mappa floating in the entryway, arms crossed and a disapproving frown clear on their face. The sight of this almost makes Ash forget about the revelation that had happened mere seconds ago. Almost. Rushing up to Mew, Ash grabs their hand before tugging them urgently towards the stick. He tries to explain to Mew about what he just discovered, but is talking so fast and so disjointedly that Mew can barely understand a word. When Ash finally lets go of their hand, he points at the thing that he'd just been looking at. Turning from their son to what he's being so urgent about, Mew's eyes widen in surprise as they recognize Sir Aaron's staff. They're about to ask why Ash had removed the glass casing from it when they notice something off about it. Looking closer, they are able to pick up on an aura buried deep within the staff's crystal. A very familiar aura. Eyes widening, Mew tells their sons to step back before they focus on the crystal. A blue glow surrounds them and the staff as they carefully reach into the crystal with their energy. After a few minutes, their energy brushes against the aura within the crystal before wrapping around it. Then, taking great care not to harm the life they now hold, they pull it back through the winding paths of the crystal and out. Ash and Inazoo watch in amazement as the crystal emits a bright light. Then, all at once, the light shoots out like a white thunderbolt, striking the ground between the boys and Mew. There, where the light had struck, kneels a Lucario. Ash and Inazoo's mouths hang open in awe at the sight of this new Pokemon. Before the boys can recover from their frozen state, the Lucario turns to Ash, eyes closed and calling him Sir Aaron. Before Ash can question it, the Lucario is right in front of him looking angry. Then, just as soon as it was there, it's gone, replaced by a look of complete confusion. Not turning away from the boy, the Lucario asks who he is. Just as Ash is about to answer, the sound of running feet echo through the cavern. Everyone in the small alcove stiffen in panic, realizing that they're about to be caught. Rushing over to the others, Mew tells them that they need to leave. Grabbing onto Ash and Lucario while Ash picks up Inazoo, Mew teleports them back to the Tree of Beginning, just before a group of guards turn the corner to find the staff of Sir Aaron, still sitting in its proper place. Back at the Tree of Beginning, the group reappears outside of the cavern that the family usually inhabits. There, Lucario is able to recognize Mew's aura and asks them what's going on. Mew explains that they teleported everyone to the tree before asking why he hasn't opened his eyes. At Lucario's silence, Mew thinks he can guess and so uses Heal Bell to soothe the pain in his eyes. With the pain gone, Lucario opens his eyes to see Mew along with a small human boy and a Pichu sitting on his head. Lucario stares at the boy, realizing that this must be the one he'd mistaken for Aaron earlier. Confused and more than a little curious, he asks the boy who he is. At the question, Mew giggles while Ash blushes, shooting them a glare. He can already tell that he is never going to live down how he and Inazoo met. Turning back to Lucario, Ash remembers the greeting that his Mappa taught him in Inazoo. Standing tall, he balls his hand into a loose fist, which he taps to his chest twice. "You may call me Wild." Lucario stares in shock. He had not expected him to introduce himself in the traditional way of a Pokemon, let alone for him to answer with telepathy. Before he can ask further questions, Ash asks if he's the same Lucario that worked alongside Sir Aaron. Hearing his old master's name makes Lucario frown, but he does confirm. At the confirmation, Ash's eyes light up and he excitedly asks what the Guardian was like, how he used Aura, and about any adventures the two had had. Lucario is so shocked by the barrage of questions, he doesn't even have time to answer them before Ash is explaining that his Mappa is always talking about Sir Aaron and how he saved the kingdom from the Aka and Midoriya armies. At this, Lucario instantly recovers from his frozen state and says that that's impossible, startling the three others. He tells them that Sir Aaron abandoned the kingdom and trapped him within the staff. Ash shakes his head and snaps back that Aaron saved the kingdom, and he can prove it. Grabbing Lucario's paw, Ash drags him through the winding tunnels of the tree to its heart. There, he leads Lucario to a cluster of crystals, which are surrounded by flowers and have a pair of gloves in front of it. Letting go of Lucario's paw, Ash gives him a push towards the crystals. Turning to it, the first thing that Lucario notices are the gloves. They're Sir Aaron's. Rushing forward, he kneels in front of the crystals before focusing on them, finding the familiar aura within them. Eyes widening, he turns back to Ash, asking what happened, to which Ash directs him to the 2 time flowers that had been placed on either side of Aaron's grave, telling him to activate the left one first. Doing so, Lucario witnesses Aaron giving all of his aura to Mew in order to give them the strength to calm the hostilities. After that, he activates the second one and hears Aaron's final message to him. Hearing Aaron's final words, and now knowing the truth behind his sealing within the staff, Lucario can't stop the tears from flowing. Walking up beside him, Ash sits down, eyes fixed on the crystal formation that was once Sir Aaron. He tells Lucario that he'd only found out about what humans are recently, but ever since, his Mappa has been telling him stories about humans they've met. Their stories of Sir Aaron are his favourite. Because he wasn't just a hero or a strong person. He was a human that fought alongside his partner as equals. They stay there for a while, Lucario mourning his lost friend while Ash sits next to him. Later that night, after Mew puts the boys to bed, Lucario feels he finally has the opportunity to ask Mew for some explanations. The first of which being who the 2 children are. With a heavy sigh, Mew explains that they're orphans that they've taken in as their own. Inazoo is a fairly recent addition, but they've been raising Ash since he was a baby. His next question is about why Ash talks about humans as though they're separate from him, and Mew explains Ash's belief that he's a Mew trapped in human form. However, Mew suspects that, deep down, Ash already knows the truth. He just doesn't want to admit it. And trying to force him into it will only hurt him and make him dig himself further into denial. So, Mew asks Lucario to not try to tell Ash that he's a human. Lucario isn't sure about the idea but does agree before shifting the topic. He tells Mew that Ash's aura is almost exactly like Sir Aaron's, which Mew chuckles at, remarking about how Lucario had mixed them up earlier. He ignores the dig. Mew pauses for a moment, seeming to be thinking about something before commenting that they've never been the best with aura control, and the only thing they've been able to teach Ash so far is how to sense aura. They turn back to Lucario, asking if he would be willing to teach Ash how to use it. The next morning, Ash and Inazoo wake to find breakfast waiting for them and Lucario telling them to eat quickly because they have a long day ahead of them. When Ash asks what he means, Lucario tells him that he's going to be teaching Ash how to use aura. To his surprise, Ash is less interested in learning aura control than he is with the fact that Lucario is staying.
Does this mean that Lucario is part of the family now?
Don't get ahead of yourself. I'm your teacher, not your parent.
Whatever you say, Sensei. Just you wait. We'll be calling you by name before you know it.
Immediately after breakfast, Lucario leads Ash to a part of the tree that opens it out into a flat plain. This, he explains, is where they're going to be training. He says that it's a good thing that Mew taught him how to sense aura already, as that means that the hardest part is already done. Now, he just needs to learn how to tap into that power within him. He carefully talks Ash through the process of drawing out his aura. It's a slow process, but Ash is a surprisingly fast learner, and within a few days, he's able to get a few sparks to form in his palm. Maybe Lucario can make an Aura Guardian out of him yet. A few days later, Inazoo demands to be given training too, much to Lucario's surprise. He explains to the Pichu that he doesn't have the right aura level to learn how to use it, only for him to shake his head. Inazoo doesn't want to learn how to use aura, he wants to learn how to fight. And if Ash is going to be an Aura Guardian, he wants to be his partner. Realizing that he's not getting out of this, Lucario agrees. More months pass, and soon it's been a full year since Inazoo had become a part of the family. Ash is planning a big surprise for his brother. With Mew currently keeping Inazoo busy with berry hunting, Ash and Lucario have a few hours to prepare the surprise that Ash has planned. Lucario watches the excitable 7-year-old zoom from one end of the cavern to the other, putting up handmade decorations while Lucario sets out the food. Shaking his head, he asks why Ash is being so excessive. Ash gives him a look like he's grown a second head, before explaining that this is Inazoo's first birthday since he joined their family. At this, Lucario gives Ash a stern look. You are not doing anything like this next year for me. That is not negotiable.
party pooper.
Just as Ash puts up the final decoration, he and Lucario hear Mew telling them that they're about to teleport in. Grinning, he zooms down to the ground just in time for Inazoo and Mew to materialize inside their cavern home.
Surprise!
Inazoo freezes in surprise as he looks around their home. Flowers have been hung up all over the walls. There's a banner of leaves with Happy Birthday written out in awkward paw print writing. Ash grins brightly while Mew floats over to him with a smile of their own, and Lucario stands behind them against a tree with his arms crossed, the ghost of a smile on his face. Looking between the three in complete bewilderment, Inazoo asks what's going on. Ash's grin broadens as he tells Inazoo that it's his birthday, the anniversary of when Inazoo first became part of their family. Reaching into his cloak, Ash pulls out a small present wrapped in a leaf and tied together with a small gracidilla flower. He hands it to Inazoo, who looks between Ash, Mew, and Lucario with wide eyes. After a few seconds of hesitation, he carefully unwraps the gift, revealing an eviolite which has been fashioned into a necklace with a long piece of string. Inazoo stares at the light purple stone as Ash says that he's glad they were able to find one in time for the party. Looking up at his odd little family, Inazoo is overcome with emotion as his mind flashes through the memories of the past year. Of the little misadventures that he and Ash would get into, of Mew seeing them both back to sleep whenever Ash would accidentally wake them with one of his nightmares, of training with their sensei, of curling up with Ash in his big warm cloak to sleep. A single tear falls down his cheek as he smiles. In that moment, his body becomes enveloped in blue light and his form changes. When the light dissipates, Inazoo stands tall as a newly evolved Pikachu. Taking the eviolite, he ties it around his neck before launching himself at Ash, tackling him in a hug, which Mew swiftly joins, while Lucario simply watches with a soft smile. A month has passed and Ash and Inazoo are making steady progress with their training, which has developed something of a pattern. Each morning, the family will wake up, have breakfast together, then the brothers will begin their training. The training itself will begin with Ash meditating in order to calm his mind and focus on his own aura, while Lucario spars with Inazoo, testing how he's improved and correcting any faults in his attacks such as balance, movement, focus, and so on. Then, Inazoo will be left on his own to practice the corrections, while Lucario tries to walk Ash through the process of drawing out his aura. This day starts exactly the same. However, halfway through Ash's meditation, he becomes distracted by something from the direction of his brother and sensei. He knows he should be focusing on his meditation, but there's something about it that doesn't sit right. Keeping his eyes closed, he shifts his attention over to Inazoo and Lucario. Focusing on their auras, he's able to see their spar, almost as though he's looking right at them. But there's something about Lucario's aura that doesn't sit right. There's a kind of echo in it that he can't ignore. Focusing on it, he begins to realize what it is. Lucario feels uneasy about something. But what? Before he can try to figure it out, Inazoo and Lucario have finished their spar. As Ash stands and trots over to them, Inazoo tells them that he's going to help their Mappa with some chores, before practicing more. While he runs toward the tunnels, Ash calls after him, telling him to be careful not to go tumbling into anything on the way. The moment the words leave his mouth, he notices a spike in that echo that he'd picked up on earlier. Ash turns to look up at Lucario, catching a glimpse of a frown on his face before he turns, saying that they need to get to work. Before he can walk away, however, Ash grabs his paw, stopping him in his tracks. Looking over his shoulder, Lucario asks what's wrong. To which, Ash says that he was going to ask the same thing. Lucario attempts to brush off Ash's question until the 7-year-old wraps his arms fully around Lucario's arm, giving him a better grip, while saying that he isn't going to be fooled. He sensed that Lucario is upset about something, and he's not letting go of Lucario's arm until he tells him what's wrong. Knowing that he's been caught, Lucario sighs and tells him that it's not important. Ash counters that it clearly is important if it's upsetting him this much. Giving a frustrated groan, Lucario tells him that it's childish, and Ash argues back that he doesn't care if it's childish. If it's upsetting him, then it's upsetting him, and he wants to help. Lucario may not consider them family yet, but he's still his teacher and his friend, and he wants to help him. Realizing that there's no way out of this, Lucario sighs and tells Ash that he's never had anyone call him anything other than his species. Confused, Ash asks what he means, as the elder pulls them to the side to sit. Lucario explains that he lost his parents when he was young and was found by Sir Aaron not long after. Everyone at the castle always called him by his species, never by a nickname. Granted, they never knew anything else to call him, and things were often very formal, but not even Aaron had called him anything other than Lucario. He knows that Ash, Inazoo, and Mew don't mean anything by it, but he can't help but feel a little out of place among them. Hearing this explanation, Ash frowns in thought, while Lucario tells him not to worry about it and gets to his feet. He begins to walk back to the training area when he notices that Ash hasn't moved. Calling over, he snaps Ash out of his thoughts and calls him over.
Coming, Rai-sensei!
At the look of confusion and surprise on Lucario's face, Ash explains that Rai is the name of a human that Mew had told him and Inazoo about. He was a refugee that made his home in the Sinnoh region, back when it was still being called Hisui. He was one of the first people to truly bond with Pokemon and fought alongside his partner Lucario to protect their new home. He was also the very first Aura Guardian. Ash thinks that it's the perfect nickname for him. Turning away from the child, Lucario tells him to call him whatever he wants, he still needs to practice. Ash smiles. Lucario may think he's hiding it, but Ash can feel just how happy he is. Another year passes by in the blink of an eye, and soon it's Ash's 8th birthday. As is the tradition for their family, Ash sleeps in, only getting up when Inazoo gets bored enough to wake him with a thunder shock. Mew and Rai watch the antics of the boys with a smile until Rai decides to break them up. Walking over to them, he tells the boys that if they have this much energy this early in the morning, they can put that energy towards training. Groaning unhappily, the two brothers follow their sensei to the training area, completely unaware of the sly smile on their mappa's face. For the next few hours, the boys train with their sensei. Ash is getting steadily stronger with his aura control, and Inazoo is getting better at fighting, but they are still a long way off from being masters. Ash still has yet to form a proper aura sphere, and Inazoo's attacks still lack punch. Two facts which Rai does not sugarcoat. Ash needs to stop letting his mind wander and focus on what he's doing. Once he's managed to pull out his power successfully, then he can start working on multitasking. Inazoo, on the other hand, needs to build up his muscle strength. But he does admit that Ash's ability to identify the emotions being echoed in an individual's aura has developed far beyond his own, and what Inazoo lacks in power, he makes up for in speed and adaptability. With the day's training done, they begin to make their way back. Running ahead of Rai, Ash and Inazoo race for the cave, laughing and jostling each other. When they emerge from the tunnel into their cave, they look up to see the entire area has been decorated with flowers and crystals. A large cake has been placed in the center of the space on a blanket, a small package wrapped in a leaf and gracidilla flower next to it. Mew floats over to their children with a big smile, asking how Ash likes his surprise party. Smiling, Ash hugs his mappa, saying that it's amazing. Leading the children and Rai over to the blanket, Mew has them all sit down before handing Ash his present. Holding back his excitement, he carefully unties the flower, allowing the leaf to unfurl, revealing a necklace with a small white and gold box on the end. Picking the necklace up, he notices that there's a key in the side of it, like the ones on some of Mappa's music boxes. Curious, he turns the key a few times and, almost instantly, music fills the cavern. Ash's eyes widen as he instantly recognizes the melody as the one that Mew always sings to him and Inazoo when they're upset. Smiling with tears in his eyes, Ash places the music box around his neck before pulling everyone into a hug. I love you all so much! And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as Ash attends a festival and meets some very interesting individuals. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.